Hey everybody, it's RCK. I'm here to bring you your next national overview, which is going to be in LA Nation. Before we get started, of course, I hope you enjoyed the Company of Heroes 2 game. I played it with a handful of friends on Discord. Maybe if enough people like it, maybe I will continuously start uploading those videos. Other than that, I have been trying to keep to a schedule. As of such, we're doing LA this week, so next week we're going to be doing an EA Nation. The week after, we're going to be doing an MA Nation. And after that, we're going to be doing an LA Nation again. So make sure to come and join me every Friday. That's when I post these videos, of course. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe as well. And without further ado, let's go ahead and start on this national overview. So as you can already tell from just looking at the screen as I was talking, we're going to be going over late age Phlegra, the sleeping giants. So overall, this is a very fun nation. As it goes into the late game, you have some really fun things you can do. There's a certain unit we'll go over later on. You won't get them till maybe at the end of turn or at the end of turn year two, closer to the beginning of year three. But as you can read here, you have the monstrous inspired lastronians will eventually break free, and that's the event that we're going to really enjoy. That's what makes this nation really fun. So just looking through this, we have humans and younger Cyclops. So this is going to be a giant and human mixed nation. Um, we have our magic paths being fire, earth, death, water, and astral. The only thing we're really missing with this is going to be nature mages. Now throughout the game, whenever you're playing on your own, of course you're going to be able to find nature 1 mages very easily as independents. But I came to, I wouldn't say that. I really suggest taking at least nature 2 in your bliss because you're going to want to make different items for your lastronian tyrants being the rings of regen, vine shields, and other things like that. Because of course you're not going to have any nature income, so you're going to have to start searching early to start getting a really good income in. As I'm saying that, let's go ahead and look over the sites. You have 1 earth gem from this site, and you have 3 fire gem from this site. So you're only going to have a 4 gem cap, and it's only going to limit you to fire and earth in the very beginning. So that's why I completely recommend going out and searching early. You'll have a very wide range of different paths. I believe it actually doesn't mention this, but you do have air paths as well. I'm surprised it doesn't mention that in the national features. Now your Dominion does increase unrest, and this is something I had to go and look up, and I found on the wiki. And let me read that to you, make sure I'm not wrong on it. So Dominion increases unrest by Dominion score divided by 2 round and randomized. So what's going to happen is, say you have a Dominion of 6. So it's going to take your Dominion score of 6 and divide that by 2, and it could increase your unrest by 3. So not too big of a deal. I found that whenever I was going around, especially in the late game, as I was waiting on the Giants to come out for the event, even when I took either neutral scales or I took unrest scales, at most I might have saw unrest 10 because normally I will set things up to PD 6 or 10. Now if you set it to 10, you always have the unrest will decrease by 1 every turn, so that definitely helps out. Now if you take order and say you take order 3, so that's going to increase unrest by 3 every turn. Now that's going to completely get rid of the unrest dominion if you decide to take Dominion 6. Anything lower, then you won't have to worry about it at all. So very interesting to think about. Um, I I wouldn't recommend going or order 3 with this nation. Some of my builds did go that just to test out, so we'll definitely talk about that later on. Now, as far as your forts go, you're only going to have standard forts except for your capital. Your capital is going to be a 3 recruitment point castle to begin with. So that means all your small mages that cost 2 recruitment points are essentially 1 turn to make. You can put two of them, or you can recruit two of them, and then every 2 turns you're going to make 3 mages. On the first turn you make the initial one with a 2, and then on the second turn it's going to count that extra point. So on the second turn you'll be able to make 2 mages. So that's going to be really, really nice coming out of your capital. But let's go ahead and get started on these units here. So to start off, almost all of your humans are actually going to be slaves, and that's going to be really, really nice because, of course, as we've gone over before, slaves are going to have slaves are going to have low morale. Yes, that's one of the unfortunate sides to it. But the really nice part about slaves is that they're going to be really, really cheap to make, and they're going to be cheap to keep up with your upkeep. Um, not all the time are they going to be cheap to make. You'll see one later on. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, but it's going to be definitely worth the money. So looking at this unit, you have a short bow in the late age. Nothing to talk home about. You're not really gonna want them. I don't recommend, even if you do flaming arrows, having these short bows. They're pretty garbage because everything in the late age is gonna have heavy armor, or you're gonna be fighting against crossbows. They cost 3 gold a year, so you take that and divide by 12, and that's how much you're gonna get per turn. Terrible skills, nothing to write home about, and very low morale. So even if you have I believe they're called Taskmaster still. Even if you have a Taskmaster, say +2, which is on the better side of having that, you might have a Taskmaster +3 if I remember correctly. But even then, I mean that's gonna take you up to 8. 8 morale is still really, really bad, and you have to be careful. So not much to really say about this unit. Now the Helite Crossbowman is going to be a much, much nicer unit. It's going to be really, really cheap. Yes, it's going to be high in resources, but of course it does have 15 protection on top of a crossbow. But at the end of the day, it is going to be a slave, so they're going to be really, really, really cheap. And yes, they do have the same amount of morale, but it's going to be able to deal a good bit more damage than the short bow unit. Um, yes, I know it's just 2 damage, but they do have a longer range. So we're going to be really, really nice, and they are armor piercing. Now, I don't believe short bows are armor piercing. Nope, they're not. Okay. So that's going to really, really add to the amount of damage they can deal, because let's go ahead and read it at the bottom. The damage value plus the strength and attack determines the amount of damage of the enemy unit. So for armor piercing damage will half the effect of the opponent's armor. So not only will you get a 25 or a 20% increase in the attack. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say attack damage. It's going to take 20% away, and then the armor piercing is going to take it away by half. So they're really, really going to be able to tear through armored units. Really, really nice. And having such a cheap unit, not much upkeep, it's going to be really, really great to mass out. And that is definitely something you can put flaming arrows on, which will make it even better for you. After that, let's go ahead and talk about the Helite Soldier. So this unit actually has an ability we haven't talked about, which is a lab promotion. So whenever this unit gets enough experience points and it goes to a province that has a lab, it's actually going to upgrade it to a different unit. I do believe one of those units are going to have are going to be magical beings, which is really quite interesting because you won't be able to move them around as easily with your normal commanders. As far as the game goes, I mean, these are really, really cheap units. Yeah, they're going to have a high resource cost and only protection 15, so rather low for a core infantry unit. So I really wouldn't recommend making too many of these guys. That's really all I have to say about them. Now, the Iron Guard are the ones I'm thinking of. I think the Helite soldiers turn into Iron Guard whenever they have enough experience. And yes, they're going to have higher protection. Yes, they're going to have much better skills. But they are going to be magical beings, and only some of your mages are going to, or not mages, but some of your units or commanders are going to be able to actually lead them. So at the end of the day, it might not be as beneficial as you might think to have these guys promoted. But they do have pretty decent attack skill and defense skills, while also having high protection and very, very high morale for slave units, which is very surprising. Only 6 gold a year, so still relatively cheap units to have around. Now, for what I've usually spent most of my time expanding with and doing other things, or is going to be the Mouflon Cataphracts, which is going to be the next unit we look at. I really, really like these units. Yes, they have a 30 gold price tag on them, being a slave unit, but you're looking at heavy cavalry. You're going to have 18 protection, you're going to have a 15 defense skill, while also having an 11 attack skill. Yes, they're going to be having 47 resource cost, but they're heavy cavalry. That's what they're supposed to cost. And recruitment points are almost, I believe they're actually lower than heavy cavalry. I think most heavy cav, they're going to be higher than 39. So really, really nice. On top of that, they still have the slave tag. So they're going to have a 12 per year cost, meaning they're only going to cost you 1 gold per cataphract per turn. So it's going to be really, really nice. And one of the best tags I think this unit has is that they have a supply bonus. Each one of these will add a supply bonus to the army. So normally enough, if you have an army of these guys moving around, they're not going to cost you any supplies. So if you decide to go and attack Lemuria, it doesn't matter if they have any pop. You can definitely just start walking through and be okay. Other than that, they have really, really strong attacks. They have a lance dealing 18 pierce damage. They have a broadsword dealing 17 slash damage, and the goat or sheep. Yeah, these are sheep actually. They have a headbutt ability, which is also going to deal a lot of damage. So this is really going to be able to tear through units having a 3, or it's going to be a size 3, so you're going to be able to fit 2 of these guys per square. And they're going to have a attack density of 6, which all have very, very decent attacks to them. So very nice unit overall. They do have a morale morale skill of 9. I wouldn't say morale skill, a morale stat of 9, which is, yeah, it's on the lower side. It's not as low as the other slaves, which I'm really glad about. And you have commanders, I believe, that have very, very high taskmaster skill, like the Phlegra Cataphract commander that has a taskmaster skill of 3. So it's going to push his morale from 9 up to 12, which is going to be really, really nice. So as our last unit here for our unit roster, we have the Cyclops Soldier. Now, these guys are going to have magic weapons along with javelins, but on top of that, it's also another tag we haven't seen yet. It's a minimum leader size of 4. So the commander of this unit, or this unit can only be led by commanders that are at least size 4, which is really interesting. Other than that, they're going to have 19 protection. They are a limited recruitment. You are limited to only making 3 of these guys a turn. Really, really high resource cost, 40 gold apiece. Yeah, they have 42 hit points, but they're size 4, so you're only going to have 1 of these guys per square anyway. So at the end of the day, I really don't think these guys are going to be worth making for you, to be honest. Um, Maybe you could do something about expansion with these guys, but even then, I feel like crossbows are going to rip them apart. And other than that, I don't think this is going to be a really, really nice late game unit anyway. And since you're only limited to 3 per turn, I believe you can make them out of any castle. Yes, you can, because they're not cap recruitment only at the bottom. You can make these in every castle, but at the same time, I mean, I still think they're way too weak, and they're definitely not as good as the cataphracts you have here. Um, I believe they're relatively expensive as well. I mean, not too bad, but every one of them is going to cost that much. So I definitely think that as far as core units go, you're going to be relying on your cataphracts and you're going to be relying on the crossbows. Now go ahead and starting off on these commanders here. You have a Phlegra commander, very average stats, 10 or 15 protection, morale of 10 because he's a slave as well, which is quite interesting. But he has Taskmaster too, so he can lead some troops around and at least add some to their morale. I wouldn't recommend using him. You have a Cyclop commander. Like I said, this is kind of like with the last commander we just had. I believe they have yeah, they only have +2. And I really don't see the point of you making too many of these guys. I mean, you can make one or so, but they're so resource intensive. And well, yeah, they have leadership 60, but you have units that are better than that still, so I wouldn't recommend making them. And I wouldn't make these guys as thugs either. You have much better thug chassis for this nation as well. So you have to definitely keep that in mind. So going on to the next unit. Now this is what I would recommend using as your commanders. Yes, they're 90 gold, 47 resources, but at the end of the day, they have a Taskmaster +3, which is going to be really, really nice. And they have a leadership 3, or they have leadership 80. So all their squads are going to get +1 morale, and added on to that. So technically, all of your slaves could get up to +4 morale, which is going to be really, really nice. Um, and having protection 18 is in defense skill 16. If he does come in contact, he has a good chance of surviving that conflict or battle someone does decide if units do decide to get to him. So really, really interesting. But he is definitely my pick if you're deciding to use troops. If you're gonna, or if you need a commander to move troops or use troops on the battlefield, he would be my pick. So next we have the Phlegra Priest. Now this is a really, really nice priest, and it has a tag that we probably haven't seen before on this nation or on any nation either. But it's going to have reduces unrest by 2. So this unit reduces unrest in the provinces currently in every turn. And while also having your dominion that increases unrest, I mean, technically you can definitely go unrest, or not unrest, you can go, what's it's 2 swords, I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but it's the opposite of order. It'll come to me later when we're looking at the pretender design, of course. But so you can take a -3 stab to your dominion like that, and also taking high dominion, which I don't see why you want to take 2 high dominion. I think 6 is high enough. But if you're having any unrest problems, I would definitely recommend putting these guys in there. They're gonna be really, really nice to have. Keeping your unrest low, of course. 1 recruitment point, so you can make 3 of these guys at your capital and 2 out of every castle. They're Yeah, they have a 65 gold cost here, but they're slaves, so they're going to be really, really cheap to keep up. But as far as level 1 priests go, this is probably one of the best ones you can get since it has the reduces unrest 2 on it. So looking at our next mage, now this is actually going to be our first mage to have mage paths. So this is going to be a 70 gold cost slave mage. 0 protection, really not, you're not ever going to want these guys ever in the fight. They do have this communion slave tag, so whenever they start a battle, they're automatically communion slaves. So really, really interesting. Be mindful of when you use these guys as slaves, because if their masters start using off-path spells, it's really, really going to increase the fatigue of them to the point where they're most likely going to die. So keep in mind on what you're having your masters cast. Make sure your masters don't go off script and start casting things that you don't want them to cast. Usually you could avoid that by putting maybe a crossbow or a regular bow or whatever you can make, putting that on them and telling them to fire closest or something along those lines. So after they're done with their script, they're going to not cast any more spells. So yes, they only have a research ability of 5. Um, as far as most of my builds go, I usually went Magic 3 with these, pushing them up to research ability 8. Yes, that's still really, really bad, but you're going to be able to make 3 of these guys every 2 turns out of your capital. You'll be able to make 1 every turn out of every castle. They're going to be really, really cheap for you to really amass a lot of these guys, so it's going to be really, really nice. Um, these are some ways to get some nice off-path things to go ahead and start site searching with. It's being water and wind or air. So getting a early start on finding those are going to be really, really nice, because I try to, how do I want to put this? I usually try to site search early on in the game, because the earlier you find something, the more gems you're able to get out of it. And usually enough, the amount of research that one mage can have researching the whole time won't be as much as maybe saying having 10 or 20 gems off of a site in a way. So it really depends on what you like to do. Maybe Because sometimes, I mean, you could be just a few points off, and that might have made the difference. Of that unit was, instead of site searching, he was actually researching. But it's really up to you and how you decide to play, of course. But these are going to be really, really cheap site or really, really cheap researchers. They're going to be research monkeys. So that's how I plan on using them in my game. And next, we're going to have a flagrant oppressor. Now, these will have a leadership of 45. They do not have a morale bonus, and that's why I wouldn't recommend using them for squads. But I mean, they still have Taskmaster, but it wouldn't be as nice. Now, when these guys happen, or when these guys start the battle, yes, they're going to be automatic Communion Masters. So really, really interesting. It's really nice to have both of those, the Communion Slave tag and Communion Master tags. Now, these guys do have a chance of getting low air and low water. But on top of that, I mean, they're going to always have fire and earth, which is going to be okay. Earth is definitely going to be a good path for boosting. Fire, not so much. Maybe some evocation spells if you decide to do that. Air would also be a decent one. Well, air and water, either one of those would be decent ones in point buffing or casting certain spells on certain units you have, or even thugs if you decide to do that. So, really, really nice commander here. Yes, it's going to be a little bit more expensive. The upkeep cost is going to be a lot more expensive. So at the end of the day, I think it's not going to be as efficient to make oppressors. Yes, you're going to be able to get a little bit research a little bit faster, but the amount of gold you're going to have to spend versus the amount of gold you have to spend for the shackled mages are really not going to change anything. I mean, you're going to be spending a lot more for the oppressors for a little bit more magic. So next we're going to look at the Oppressor General, which is going to still have a Communion Master part to it, or a Communion Master tag. Relatively high because this is going to be a mage as well. Even higher upkeep cost. Oh, actually, I believe it's around the same upkeep cost, but nothing really right home about. I mean, yeah, he has Earth 1. Maybe you can use him as a small thug, maybe a raid 6 PD or so, but you really have to be careful in the late age because, I mean, crossbows are still going to be able to kill him. Maybe if you put air shield or something along those lines and then iron skin, maybe you can get away with it, but it's going to be a tough one to really sell for him. So you have a Cyclops Smith, um, M.A. Phlegra, also, I believe M.A. Phlegra and McConaughey might have Cyclops Smiths as well, but I think the MA one is the best one to have. Now, he's going to have a resource bonus of 20, so whenever he's sitting in, say, your capital, he's going to give this or 20 resources to try to make more units, if you can kind of get that in a sense. So every one of these is going to add 20 resources to the castle or capital that it's sitting in. So next, we have a Master Smith ability. I'm kind of getting jumbled up on my words here. It says highly skilled for crafting magic items, of course. But what it does, say you have let's just say I'm not going to add the random paths to it, just say he's a Fire 1 and Earth 1 mage. By having the Master Smith 1 ability to him, he's going to be able to forge Earth 2 and a Fire 2 items. So really, really nice to have. I know you get a few nice randoms going up, so you can forge up to things like Earth 3. So you're going to have like Dwarven Hammers. You're going to be able to do up to Air 2 or Water 2 for sure. Now, the 10% chance, you're not going to see many of them at all. So if you're lucky, you'll be able to get even higher. But at that point, you'll have to get the air random, or the first air random, and then the second air random. So, going to be very, very difficult to see. Now, you could definitely use these guys as your thugs as well, but I wouldn't recommend it. You still have a much better option on the way. But these guys could definitely work. On top of that, they have a very, very high magical resistance, which is really nice to have on thugs. But I don't think these guys could ever be super combatants. So going on to our next bit here, we have our last mage in this lineup here, which is going to have a lot of paths to him. It's going to be cost you around 335. Also has the Communion Master tag. They are going to have old age, so these guys are going to get afflictions, but this is also going to be a sacred mage. Now these are the paths that it's able to get, and this is one of your only ways to actually get astral, which is going to be really nice, and you want to make sure you search for it. On top of this, you're going to have, oh, I apologize for that. Thought I turned my phone off. I'm not even sure who's messaged me this late at night. Um, okay, sorry about that. So, on top of that, I mean, getting up to Astro 2 is going to be really, really nice to search since most sites, once you search a site at level 2, there aren't many sites that are actually level 3 or higher. So, searching that level 2 is going to really take care of most sites if you can find them. And then having all these other paths here, that's going to be really, really nice for you because, well, you could definitely search higher in some of these, but just getting those base ones off is going to be nice because all your other ways you can get them being your shackled mages, you're going to have a mage go through, search it for air, you're going to have a mage go through, search it for water, you're going to have a mage go through, search it for earth. So that's already three mages that's already wasted their time when you can use one oppressor archon to just do it himself. Yes, of course, I will highly recommend you site searching higher fire than fire level 1. You're going to want a very, very high fire income for the plan that I have for this nation. This is a way to get priest level 2, but it's very expensive. You do not have any recruitable priest level 3s. So after going through all that, I'm going to go ahead and go over to the screen here. So this is my turn 12 expansion. Now I know it says 13 if you look at it at the bottom, but I accidentally pressed the button, and I'll read as the messages look here. We did not have any attacks on the 13th turn, so this is definitely our turn 12 expansion on the first year. And from the looks of it, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 on our first, or on 12 turns. So overall, it wasn't too bad. I feel like it definitely could have gone better. Um, I feel like we have cut a few places off that we can definitely get after this. I feel like we can take this fairly easily since it is our cap circle. So technically that would be Province 16. And I don't feel like this one would be too hard either. So that might be Province 17. I probably wouldn't recommend going any farther with this army. But at the same time, I mean, we cut that off. So unless there's a water nation, that's Province 7 or 18. And then I feel like this army could possibly go back and fight this stack here being 19. So really interesting. We do have a lot of money in the bank, so we could have made a few castles in those 12 turns, of course. I took a little odd god here because something special about this nation is you can't actually take Dom 1 pretenders, in which I really, really enjoy taking Dominion 1 pretenders. So you can't take any humans as your pretender. That's what that's essentially meaning. And the reason why I took this was I took the Gorgon because it had Nature 1 and it had Earth 1, which I wanted at least do Earth 2 and Nature 2. I believe I might have already had Earth 2 if I remember. But I definitely wanted to go up to Astral 5. Not for any particular reason. I like going high Astral. I think it puts you into a better place once it reaches the late game. Not only do I want to take Nature 2 on this because I wanted to get this is a dormant god, of course. I did not take an awake on this. I wanted a early site searcher while also having a site searcher for Astral. And having at the point when you have a higher astral income because, of course, you start off with zero. You can cast things like, or you can forge things like Skull Shine or the Skull Cap, which is going to give you +1 astral. So that's going to give you level 6. At level 6, you can forge a Ring of Sorcery, which is going to put you up to level 7. At level 7, you can forge a Ring of Wizardry, which puts you up to level 8. At that point, it's going to really open you up to a lot of things with this nation because you're going to be able to have high nature, of course, with your god because you have both the rings. You're going to be able to cast very high astral spells or globals, and at that point, just about any one you decide to put those rings on, they're going to be boosted high enough to cast just about any kind of global you want, being the fire one that gives you 20 fire gems per turn, or riches from beneath, or Earthblood Deepwell. It would definitely be a lot easier to get to those things. So it's just something interesting to think about. Definitely, you don't. I mean, you definitely don't have to go with this pick. I'll go over gods later. That's just an idea I had, so we'll look at that later for sure. Um, these were the squads that I was using, and if I was playing in a game, of course, I would have them on attack closest, fire, probably something along those lines. And like I had them unscripted, and they were doing very, very well still. This is just a larger unit. I believe I had 3 expansion parties going, but I lost one of them. And I also believe that one of my provinces rebelled. I don't remember which one it was, but I think I had an additional province added on to this. Actually, there's the third one. No, that was the second one. My bad. Maybe that was the third one that died. Looks like our commander lived. But so very, very interesting. Decent expansion. I really wouldn't say it's all that great. You could definitely take an awake if you wanted a better expansion, but honestly, I don't think you really want a better expansion because I don't feel like you're going to be attacking people until year 2 or 3. You don't want. I wouldn't recommend early wars. Your troop lineup isn't that great. Yes, you have the cataphract here, which is really, really nice, but other than that, you really don't have anything you want to bring to the battle. Also, something I forgot to mention about these mages is that every one you have, there's a very, very high chance they're going to be recruited and they're going to have an affliction. So if you notice all these mages over here, there's most of them have afflictions to them. That one has a chest wound. That one has a chest wound. That one has a never healing wound. That one has a never healing wound. So a lot of them are going to have afflictions. Really not that big of a deal, but it's something I wouldn't necessarily say you have to keep an eye on, but you just kind of have to remember. Um, research is alright for turn 13 since a lot of the turns we've spent making these commanders instead, or at least 3 turns anyway. So I'll go ahead and go and look at another save game that I have. I believe it's test 1. I did do 3, and I'll talk about them. Now, of course, this one I didn't do expansion with, but what I really want to talk to you about was an event that happens. Now, it's randomized. I think it happens after year 2, or definitely after year 1, and I'm not sure by how much, but I did 3 tests. On the first test that I had, it happened on turn 35. On the second test, it happened on turn 33. And on the fourth test, it happened on turn 42. So interesting that it happens all those different times, but your volcano that you had that gave you 3 fire gems actually turns into this once the event happens. So it takes away one of your fire gems altogether, and then it gives you a death gem instead, minus another one. But it gives you these guys, the lastronian tyrants. Now this is what makes the nation really, really fun. These are very, very expensive mages, yes, and they do take 2 turns out of your capital to make. So they have 88 hit points, protection 19, magical resistance 18, attack skill 14, defense skill 10. It really doesn't matter as much, and the defense skill is so low. Morale of 15. They have leadership 30, but I wouldn't recommend having these guys lead anybody. And you're going to have really, really high. Actually, this is going to be a 9-path mage with a chance of getting a 10th path. So really, really cool. Has a lot of tags to him. He's able to go underwater. He has fear 7, fire resistance 17, poison resistance 10, berserker 4, a siege bonus of 15, recuperation. So all the afflictions he gets, he's going to be able to get rid of. Gluttony, so he costs more supplies. He's a heretic, so he pushes your dominion out. He has a shattered soul, so he's going to have a chance to be insane every turn and not listen to you. Taskmaster plus 4. He eats 70 population. He's an in-depth researcher. He causes 10 unrest every turn. He's unsurroundable, so has less. What's the word I'm looking for? If he's surrounded by units, it'll take less of his defense skill away. He's a combat caster, so he's going to be really good at casting spells in melee. And he's going to have very, very strong paths. Going over that, I will talk more about why these paths are so good when we go over research here in a moment and your research goals. But as you can tell, he has a very, very high, or he has a lot of attacks, and he's going to be dealing a lot of damage with those attacks. And this one here is going to have 5 attacks on its own. So really, really cool unit. Lots of fun. I'm not necessarily going to go over all the construction items that you can make for him, but I will leave that up to you. I do feel like using these guys, not necessarily thinking that you should have your own style, but I feel like it's definitely a learning experience working with these guys, and I think you should, even if you watch this guide, I think you should definitely load up a test game. You should make some of these guys, you should make some items, you should see what's good with them, and you should test it out on your own. I'm going to give you a name of a few items that's going to be nice with them, but I definitely do think that you should try it out on your own. So, looking at them, so this is your hero one that you get. Going to be a Fire 4, Earth 4, Def 2. He's going to be making 2 gems per turn, 2 fire gems. So, technically enough, as long as he's alive, you don't actually lose 2 gems a turn, or you don't actually lose that 1 fire gem a turn from your capital. You kind of add 1 in a way, as long as he's alive, of course. So, kind of interesting to think about. So while looking at this, I'm going to go ahead and start talking about the research goals that you're going to have for this nation. Before that, I'm going to take a drink of water real fast. All right, for our first research goal, which I highly recommend because I don't recommend going into any early wars in this nation, is going to be going after construction 6. Now, what that's going to do for you is that it's going to be able to have, you're going to be able to have very powerful magic items. So not only that, you're going to be able to make lightless lanterns, and at this point in the game, you're going to have a very high fire income, and you're going to have a lot of fire gems stacked up. So you're going to be able to turn fire gems into research items that give you around 14 research per item, which is going to be really, really nice. Other than that, you can also make things like alquils. They're not as efficient per gem cost, but I mean, it's going to be nice to have just to really, really increase your research, because that's what's going to really hurt you if you go into a war, is how much research you have. Because like we said before, your units are going to be fairly garbage except for your cataphracts, and even then they're going to fall off mid to late game if they don't have mage backup. So by going construction 6 first, you're really going to be able to push your research to very, very high levels. Like this is turn 35 and I have done no site searching, but we already have 111 fire gems. So in all honesty, that can turn into, what, 5 gems per Well, actually, you can have even less than that. You can have them at costing around 3 gems per, since you can make dwarven hammers. So that's actually really, really nice to think about. But other than the lightless lantern, Construction 6 is going to give you a lot of items that are going to be really, really nice to put on your tyrants. You're going to have you have your regen, you have vine shields, you have there's actually a shield that will give him awe, which is a really nice include since fear is going to lower morale, and awe is going to have it so I believe it's like a morale versus 12 or morale versus 13, and if they don't hit that um, check, they're not going to be able to attack the unit. So by decreasing their morale by 7 and then having that ability on him is going to be really, really nice. Other than that, I mean, you're going to have a lot of units to, or not units, of course, items that will make him a whole lot better. You have the Earth 1 5 gem item that will give him, it's like Armor of Knights, I believe, which is a very, very high armor, which is going to really, really increase him because he has 0 armor value actually. All the protection he currently has, which is up to 18, is going to be all his natural protection. So other than that, going on to our next goal, I don't want to spend too much time talking about these, is going to be your alteration goal. Now this is going to be a really, really big one, and it's pretty far down, and this was why I think you need to hit Construction 6 first to really boost your research so you can get to 7 pretty fast afterwards. You'll have Phoenix Pyre. So this is going to be a really, really nice way of keeping your tyrant alive while also having Soul Vortex on him. So it says 10 AP fire damage, explosion area 50, fatigue upon death is 30 d20. So every time your tyrant dies, he's going to explode and he's going to reappear somewhere as long as he's not fatigued out. Um, so it's going to be really, really nice on keeping him alive. Now, what Solar Vortex is going to do, it says anyone close to Necromancer will feel his life force drained from him. The life force will be used by Necromancer to restore his own health and endurance. So this is going to greatly decrease his fatigue if he's cast a spell already, if he's surrounded by units. And that's usually going to be the only way they're going to be able to kill him. They're going to have to surround him and have a lot of units attacking on him to really knock him out of the game. So having that combo going is going to be really, really nice. And of course, yes, all of your lastronian tyrants they're going to be death 3, but just adding an extra gem to them is going to make him be able to cast Soul Vortex. So something to keep in mind, definitely think about it, and every tyrant will be able to cast Phoenix Pyre. And yes, throughout here we're going to have other really, really nice spells for you to cast, but I'm not going to necessarily go over them right now because I just wanted to show you the goals, of course. So next, as our last goal, I feel like going down to at least enchantment level 4. You also have some decent things here in, actually there's not too much here in 5. You do have a spell here, which is kind of interesting, but it's not as useful as you would think. Just doing a quick look through here, and I mean there's really nothing other than Eternal Pyre here in 6 that you would want. This is the spell I spoke to you about, was giving you 20 fire gems each turn, which is going to really increase the amount that you have. Aerofin might also be a nice one if you move out with armies, of course, since you do have Communion Air. Might be a good spell to keep in mind, because eventually you will want to go up to Eternal Pyre. But as far as just a main goal, I would at least want to reach level 4, because that's going to give you flaming arrows, which is going to be good for your mass crossbows, while also having anti-magic, which is going to be really nice as well. And that's really all I have to talk about as far as your goals go. But you will always kind of have to keep things in mind. I don't want to say these goals and say, oh, this is what the guide said, so I died on turn 20. What happened? I mean, you really have to take things into your own hands if certain things are happening in the game, and you have to make a judgment call on that. So I'm gonna get out of this game here, and we're going to head over to making the gods. Now, I didn't actually save them, but I took a picture of them on my phone. So, for the first one here, whenever I did the Gorgon, we will look over that one first because honestly, that's one of my more favorite ones, and I would more than likely go with that one again. So, I went to 5, and I was correct. He did already have Earth 2, otherwise, I wouldn't have put him up to Earth 2. Earth 5, Farcaster, because you do have those holy mages being the Archons here. If you want to, of course, you can always go with something different. You could definitely do something like Arcane Finesse for sure. And then Minor Magical Resistance. I would take him Dormant. Uh, I believe this is. Maybe I took 2. Now I'm almost positive this is what I ended up having. I might have went 3 and just went for the extra luck, but I'm not entirely sure. I doubt I would have at this point. That still seems like a little much to me. You could definitely work with something like this. You do have to remember you have very, very high recruitment, or not recruitment, resource costing units, so you have to keep that in mind. I highly recommend going Magic 3. I would normally also like to really have these luck scales here. You could, it's almost worth going something like this here, and I don't think we can get that 6 point off. No, we can't. So that would also be really nice, or you could go with a luck and growth path there. Couldn't think of the word for a moment. Keep in mind this is going to have you at negative 13 income. So definitely something to think about. But it might definitely be worth having the early site searcher. Other than that, you could go with a imprisoned, but that's going to put you so late. I wouldn't recommend it. Another thing that I was trying out was I was trying out awakes. I wouldn't recommend that one. I would recommend the white bull a little bit more. And what I did, I just went Earth 2, Nature 2, took these off, went awake. I went up to 6, down to 1, 1, 1, I believe. And I went there. And this is what I took for the awake. It is definitely worth trying to research to get enchantment 2 for personal regen, and keep that in mind because, or it might also be worth going up and getting iron skin as well, or stone skin, because these crossbows are definitely going to be able to kill your bull, and you have to really be careful about it. I do not recommend a turn 0 expansion or turn 1 expansion, or a blind expansion, that's what they're called. So you definitely have to keep that in mind, and you definitely want to be able to cast personal regen on this unit before sending him out into battle. Because if not, they are definitely heavy calves are going to be able to kill him, crossbows are going to be able to kill him, and those are things you're going to see a lot of in the late age. So keep that in mind by a lot. Yes, you'd still have a very pretty low, or you'll still be taking a lot of income stab here, but other than that, I mean, I tried out a few other things because you still want a god you can move around with, of course. And I did something like I believe I went with this, but the only bad side about this is that the taking the Nature 2 is going to cost you a whole lot. So at the end of the day, is it really worth it? Hmm. Just trying to min-max here at this point. And then you can still go with the Farcaster minor magical resistance plus to them. At this point, you really won't have to worry about the unrest too much, and you'll still be taking really good scales. But yes, you're not going to have any extra income. But you're not going to see him till year 3, and that's going to be the real downside to him. You're not going to be able to get those early site searchers out, which I think are really going to be key for this nation. So that was just some stuff I want to talk about. I know when we get to the gods, I kind of get sidetracked a little bit because I try to include multiple ways that you can use them, of course, because people are always going to want different things, and I don't feel like, if you wanna take a different god, I think you definitely should. I don't think you should be told what to do, of course. If you want to take the Hound of Hades, the best boy here, you can definitely take him. Um, you can take the Earth Serpent, which is going to be a great expander. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. I've seen this guy do some work in expanding. I've seen the Great Archon do work expanding. I've seen the Great Mother, not as much as I used to, but I've seen her work well expanding. And yes, she's also going to have the Earth 2 or the Nature part to him already. So yes, we're not going to do the Astral. We're just going to go up here to Heat 3, here to Magic 3. I'd at least go to 5 or 6. You can take 1, 2, maybe something like that. And that might actually work out for you. Um, I would probably take something like this, to be honest with you. It's going to leave you with a very decent early expander, very high hit points. It already has natural regen on it, so if you go up to Enchantment 2 and cast Personal Regen, it's going to have 20% regen, which is going to overall have it at 32 hit points per turn regenerating, while also being able to cast buff spells on itself. Now this one actually is probably even better than the Great Bull, of course. So really interesting, something to definitely think about. Um, so I know I get a little sidetracked at the end, like I said before, but I hope you guys really enjoy it. Come back next week, next Friday, for our next EA Nation overview. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. As a little spoiler, I guess I can say it's going to be a little spooky, if any of you have an idea of what I'm talking about. So make sure you guys have a great day. Come back next week, like, comment, subscribe. See ya.